Okay, the Red Line will be the city's first bus rapid transit line. Phase 1 is happening whether the referendum passes or not. A federal grant will pay to build it, and then money from the tax hike would pay for some of the day-to-day costs. But the Red Line is just one piece of the Marion County Transit Plan.
In this city of more than 850,000 people, everyone has something to do, someplace to be. Everyone is in constant motion, except for those who feel stuck.
Imagine if your garage door only opened once an hour, and that was the only time you could get your car out of the garage. That's what it's like with a bus stop that only comes once every hour.
The system has never really gotten people to where they need to go.
That's why Indigo says our city is long overdue for a public transit overhaul.
Indianapolis is the 33rd largest metro region in the country, and we only offer the 86th largest public transportation network.
Indigo says the Marion County Transit Plan will move us up to number 65, with buses that run earlier in the morning, more often during the day, and later at night. Plus, it will pave the way for 3 new bus rapid transit lines. The Red Line will initially run from Broad Ripple to Uwindy. The Blue Line would go from Cumberland to the airport, and the Purple Line would take riders from Lawrence to the downtown transit center. It all adds up to a 70% increase in service that Councilor Jeff Miller says Indianapolis desperately needs.
People want that freedom and that mobility. When we don't have it as a city, we fall down a couple tiers or many tiers. We don't compete well with other cities.
But not everyone thinks mass transit will move Indianapolis in the right direction.
We have other needs in our city: schools, fire, police, our roads, and so transit isn't the priority for us.
Aaron Tuttle with the group Stop the Red Line thinks the transit plan is a bad idea.
Indianapolis is a very convenient city to drive around in.
Miller argues driving is not very convenient for people who don't have a car.
If they can't get to their job, reliably get to their job. I mean, right now there's some situations where it's an hour and a half on the bus system to get from one side of town to the other. That's ridiculous.
The hours of service and the lack of frequency and the lack of weekend access really impede folks' ability to get to work.
If you hop on a bus here near 16th and Capitol now, this map shows the area Indigo says you can reach within an hour. This is what that map would look like if the plan goes forward. With the new system upgrades, Indigo says 57,000 more jobs will be within 60 minutes of this stop alone.
I'm voting yes because I think the people who work late shifts, they need to be able to get home.
Opponents say the new system would not help people who need reliable transit the most. Tuttle questions why the first BRT line starts in Broad Ripple.
There's not a real demand for it here.
Tuttle believes an upgraded transit system would lead to higher fares, something people who rely on transit might not be able to afford.
Indigo hasn't adjusted our fares since 2009, and we're looking at the fares regardless of what happens with this plan. The plan doesn't propose a direct fare increase.
If the BRT lines take up a lane of traffic, some worry it will mean headaches for drivers, like congestion and less parking. Advocates say those issues won't last long as people stop driving cars and start taking transit.
That's sort of a fingers crossed kind of an answer. That's a real hopeful idea that people are going to give up their cars and they're going to take transit.
Both sides can agree Indianapolis is at a crossroads.
If we don't do it now, we fall so far behind, you have to wonder whether we're going to have a public transit system, and that scares me a little bit.
Which direction our city turns is up to you.
Now here's exactly what Indigo says the transit tax could cost you. 0.25% tax increase means 25 cents for every $100 you make. If you make $42,000 a year, you'll pay an extra $105 annually. If you make $150,000, that's an extra $375 every year.
A couple quick things. You made it clear there, but I want to make sure that I said 2.5%. It's 0.25. That's a huge difference there.
A quarter of a percent.
As they make their decisions, want to make sure you know that clearly. Also, this is not one of those things that if the vote passes, boom, it happens. There are big steps still to happen before then.
Right. The City County Council has the final say. They actually don't have to raise taxes by 0.25%. They can choose not to raise taxes at all, or they can choose to raise them by a lesser amount. So really with this vote, you're giving the City County Council permission to raise taxes.
Oh my goodness. So much has gone into this. I mean, really, it's a lot to consider. And I guess maybe as a voter in Marion County, it's your choice to decide, do we need this or do we not need this?
Exactly.
And that's what yes and no mean in this situation.
We'll be sure to get a lot more information on wishtv.com.
Okay.